We're in the basement. Depends how honest you want it to be, really. But that used to be called the rat cupboard. And the reason for that is because when we first came in, there was a family of rats who lived in this, what used to be an old accountant's office.
This is Lecker. I'm Lucy Dearlove. Learning to cook is such an interesting thing to me. This is often something I think about when I'm on TikTok, as countless cooking videos pop up on my FYP, because never before in history have we had such frictionless access to videos of people cooking things. And it seems really logical to learn how to cook this way because cooking is such a physical activity. But when you consider cooking schools, which again makes sense to learn this way because it's such a physical thing, cooking schools tend to be quite serious and formal. In my mind, I always have a picture of stainless steel surfaces and industrial appliances. But what about a different kind of cooking school? One intended to try and meet people where they are in terms of their skills, their knowledge, and their kitchens. This is Jeremy Pang, who founded the School of Wok.
In the first week of us opening, one of the first ever customers we had was our landlords, and it was in their class that we saw a lovely friendly creature sort of run past the surveyor, and I didn't tell her because obviously our customers say. So we
distracted her.
I distracted her with
Cleaver's
beautiful
walks,
food,
yes.
and then they had a lovely time. And then the day after, I sent her an email. I said, "Can you please sort this out? No problem." So it's now not the rat cupboard. Anyway,
I love that that's what you started.
And this is Adrian's going, what the?
Okay.
Right, anyway, let's get over the rat story. Welcome to School of Wok.
On this episode, I'm handing over the hosting to my friend and collaborator, the food writer Adrian Katz-Kennedy. Adrian and I headed down to the School of Wok together so she could interview Jez, an old friend of hers.
I met Jez about 12 years ago or so.
Wow, okay.
I was managing a cookery school in Marylebone, and he and his business partner walked in looking for some place to hire to do some cookery classes.
Right, and then he poached you.
And then he poached me. It's great.
The concept at the beginning was very much, I could teach you, anyone, in 3 hours, you can pick 3 dishes, any food that you've ever eaten in a Chinese restaurant, I'll teach you how to cook. Which was quite a big concept because I couldn't cook every single dish that every single Chinese restaurant in the UK has ever offered.
That's
I didn't know.
asking a lot from you.
Yeah, and people did. Like, most people would, they'd ask for like an egg fried rice, a sweet and sour pork, and maybe a crispy chili beef or something like that. And to be fair, I'd never even cooked a crispy chili beef in my life before opening School of Wok. But I knew, like, because of my upbringing, my dad was definitely more of the wok sort of chef, and he at home, and I learned a lot from him growing up. Not that he taught me, he just showed me. He just like, watch, son, watch, and you'll learn. Very quickly after opening in 2009 and teaching sort of friends of friends, I think it took about 6 months for most of my customers. I was at 55% of the customers after 6 months are coming from Google, searching for Chinese cooking lessons in London.
There was quite a thirst for home cooking at that time, though, with recession and kind of moving away from restaurant entertaining into home entertaining.
It was.
So it sounds like it was serendipitous.
I think you're right. I think the recession helped me start this business, which is a weird thing to think about. I was like 25. What do I do? I'd lost my job on the day of my dad's burial, and then came back home to a recession. Couldn't find a job in corporate again. Right. I was in marketing and PR, marketing mainly. My wife basically said to me, well, why don't you teach cooking? And that's how it started. And then now, like looking, 13 years back, I think the concept of School of Wok hasn't changed that much, But what we did when we stepped foot in here was we got rid of we'll teach you anything, it's your choice. It was more like, no, we have to build menus into each one of the classes, because otherwise it was just not manageable. If everyone wants to learn something completely different in the same class, it's just not manageable at all. At that time, it was mainly Chinese still. But what we did was we split them at the very beginning. Because we'd been to lots of Western cookery classes, we split them like they did. And that was like knife skills or wok skills or, But very quickly we realised that didn't work for us. That actually we had to teach every class like you were cooking a normal meal at home. Like, you wouldn't ever just focus at home on your knife skills. No. Especially with Asian cooking, you're like, no, every class needs knife skills. Yeah, that's important, So the first half an hour, every class now, and the format changed at that point in the first year, I'd say every half an hour of every class was, here, this is how you use a cleaver. Yeah, these are the reasons why a cleaver is so much more versatile in many ways to a 20 centimetre chef's knife. Yeah. And then you move on to your preparation is done. Let's make some lovely dumplings or whatever, and you get that sort of nice therapeutic feeling of like making something. It's like an immediate reward when you've made something you've never made before and it looks beautiful in front of you. Yeah. And then you go into the wok cooking, you get your adrenaline rush. Yeah. So over time it changed to more like cuisine based, and we started to introduce more like Southeast Asian cuisines, and things like that. And now we teach Chinese or Southeast Asian cuisines, Korean, Japanese, but it's taken us best part of 10 years to be able to introduce what I would say the UK mass audience would deem as newer cuisines here. Yeah. And even then, most people don't really know anything outside of a handful of the most popular dishes from those places. Yeah. What we're teaching is not necessarily how to cook one dish, dish by dish. Of course we do that in the classes. What we're teaching is more why I think most Asian families I know, food is what brings us together. So it's like a cultural, a really positive cultural experience without being too focused on being Asian. Does that make sense? Yeah. I think that was important to me because I was brought up with best of both worlds. But the best part of the Asian culture that I was brought up in was definitely the food and feasts that we had as a family. Yeah. So to bring that to the world in a different way, that I think that's why we've stayed here. Other than the name being super cool, we've stayed here because we've got quite a unique way of delivering that. Yeah.
The rat cupboard is now completely sealed up, totally safe, and is in fact used as a cloakroom. School of Wok is close to the heart of Covent Garden, near Chinatown, on a quiet little alleyway that you wouldn't know existed if you weren't going there for a particular purpose.
It's just behind Coots Bank. It's almost like a lost street. No one really knows it's here, and it's never really changed that way. But there are some nice, the Harp, the pub down the road, has been here for God knows how long. It was, when we first started, owned by a lovely old Irish lady who owned it for many, many years. And it's a little sort of community almost, yeah.
When Jez and his business partner, Nev, first went to view the school, it was an accountant's office. And the first room you walked into was just set up into little cubbies. So now it's the shop front. You walk in, it's where classes will do their preparations, all of their knife skills, and then at the end, the tables are flipped around, so it's where everyone can enjoy their meal together at the end of the class. So at the back of the space, you have the kitchen, where the class will go into towards the end of the 3-hour period to watch a demonstration and then do all of the wok cooking.
When we got through to this back kitchen, this is when both Nev and I, my business partner and I, were quite excited, I would say, because this space was, in terms of an empty shell, how it currently feels. And so we came in here and they actually already had the skylights, I think. And there's a lot of light that comes in here, even though we're in central London and we're surrounded by buildings. we get this sort of flood of light in here, natural light. And when we came in here, we thought, oh yeah, we could definitely build a kitchen into here. And that's when we started thinking, okay, this is more real than not. The basement downstairs was hard to figure out, but we sort of worked the design of School of Wok backwards from this back kitchen. It's a weird shape, but it does work. And now this is where we do all our filming for the School of Wok YouTube channel. Of course, we need the space for a lot of pots and pans, and all the woks are under, like in the cupboards, but you can see woks dotted around everywhere, and steam baskets like all over the place.
So School of Wok is quite different than a lot of other professional or even recreational cookery schools in that it doesn't feel overwhelming. There's no big, shiny appliances for the most part. It's not a professional kitchen. It feels a lot more like a domestic space. The whole School of Wok approach and Jez's approach is to make it relaxed, to make cooking fun rather than task-oriented. So I think the reason for the school being set up the way it is to make customers feel comfortable, so they're less intimidated by the skills that they're going to learn.
What we wanted was an open space where every pod or kitchen pod felt like a flat kitchen. Like, you don't require huge amounts of space to be able to cook beautifully, like good home cooked food. Yeah, I mean, all the way around there's sort of single, what we call them like domino hobs or induction hobs, because they literally look like a domino piece dotted around the outside of the kitchen. In the middle of the kitchen there's an island with the only gas hob in School of Wok, and then 2 domino induction hobs either side. I've got 1 gas wok hob in there. That's mainly for use on the YouTube channel, so that I've got a bit of versatility. But the whole concept with School of Wok was I started teaching people in their own homes how to cook Chinese food. When you teach in people's homes, you don't have a choice of what hob you have. So it was either, I remember Hannah, who's one of our staff who's been a long time, her dad was one of my first ever customers, and they had in their old kitchen a ceramic hob, old school 1970s style ceramic hob. We cooked like all the stuff that we teach here today, we were cooking on that hob, and we worked out how. Yeah, I am not a believer of the traditional is always best. I think it's a case of no, you use what you got and you work it out from there. And at first, when we put induction hobs into here, a lot of people are like, how can you have a wok school without gas feed? We actually capped off the gas feed. We don't have a gas feed today. We just have a butane gas cylinder under this hob for that because we capped off the gas feed quite confidently. Yeah. For various reasons, commercially, we were at that point we made a link with one of our sponsors who were really it's at the forefront of induction technology. And they said, can you cook this stuff on induction? And I said, give me heat, any type of heat, and you can cook it. But also we thought, actually, no, it's a nice thing because it's modern, it's easy to clean down. But it's also, we felt that most modern flats these days built with either electric or induction hobs. And so if we couldn't teach people how to use their own equipment, then we wouldn't succeed. Yeah. There was a lot of cookery schools, we used to dot around all of them before we opened here, that had quite commercial, industrial kitchen spaces that they were doing cooking classes in. Actually, we knew that customers going to those cook schools were quite daunted by standing in an industrial kitchen environment. And so we wanted this space to be as close to home as possible. Yeah. And that has worked. And that has never changed. We've always had that feeling of, whatever restrictions, whatever you feel may be at home, you still have here. But we're showing you that they're not really restrictions. You can cook what you want, so long as you've got a bit of heat. Yeah. Because once you control heat and know how to control heat, you can cook on anything. Yeah. the School of Wok way is very much like hands-on cooking, so as much as possible we explain little things here or there, or we give people like tips and tricks on how to be more confident on the wok, or how to get the best out of cooking their Thai curries or whatever it might be. But like where possible, we'll take a guinea pig to demonstrate stuff from the group of customers, because that, I believe, makes the whole group then much more confident that they can do it themselves. Yeah. When customers first walk in, most of the time they don't know each other. In the first 10-15 minutes, they can be quite quiet and not really sort of get on, like, you know, they're just a bit sort of scared of talking to each other. But then the chef gets them involved. They start chopping. They're really concentrating on not chopping their fingers off, you know. And then once they've gotten past the sort of garlic, ginger, and spring onion,
Right.
then they're usually pretty comfortable and they start chatting to each other, you know. And then by that point, out there when they're preparing, it's almost quite zen in a sense. It's quite, especially the public classes, very relaxed, but also everyone's really eager to learn. I'd say then it takes about 45 minutes to an hour or so at least before they might have to come in here and cook a curry or get a curry started. When they come in here, they're like, oh yeah, let's get cooking, sort of thing. They've got that feeling, and then the chef, usually because of our style of cooking, like Asian cooking, there's a lot of it can be quite theatrical in many senses. So they enjoy that, you know, the wok demonstrations, or even like intricacies of like how to get the best flavour out of a curry paste, you know, by sort of slowly frying it off, and you know, all that sort of stuff is interesting, isn't it? It's interesting, yeah. And that's part of the love of food. Enjoy it. Like, you know, some things are really quick, some things are much slower, and the slower things, you know, you enjoy that, you know, you give it that love, and the quicker things, you get that adrenaline rush.
As Jez was talking about the physicality and the joy you get from cooking in person, I was wondering how he helped to translate that to the cookbooks he writes.
Cooking is extremely like physical. Everything is done by like hand-eye coordination and, you know, muscle memory. The best place to do it is actually come in and take a class. Like, but even watching a cooking demonstration, like, is perhaps you're taking more in that 20 minutes than you might take in from reading the whole introduction to a book, you know. So yeah, but what the books do is they sort of they're the sort of more prolonged effect of learning. You can go back to it. You can go into like pages that you've missed, or you might not remember everything that we've taught you in a class. That's why we think we have things like the wok clock, because whether it's illustrated in a book or it's sitting right in front of you on a table, it's very it's visually appealing. Like, you see it and you go, oh, that's so useful.
Do you want to explain what a wok clock is?
Yes, yeah. So wok clock, I guess I've become a bit famous for. School of Wok has. It's like our way of explaining mise en place. But it's, you know, a round plate. Everyone's got round plates at home. So that's your wok clock. And you start at 12 o'clock with your first ingredient, and then you go all the way round. So by the time you've done your 90% of you know, your preparation, all your chopping and getting your sauces together, anything that you need to like soak or cook, pre-cook, you know, you've done all of that, then your recipe's right there in front of you, and you know exactly what needs to go first, second, third, fourth, fifth, yeah. That's what the wok clock is, and it works a treat, not just with wok cooking, but any type of cooking. And most friends I know who like, you know, read my recipes or books or whatever, that's the thing that they take away is the wok clock, and they'll it just betters their cooking in general.
In Jeremy's other cookbooks, while the wok clock has been included in his new book, Jeremy Pang's School of Wok, this is the first time where there is a visual illustration. It's done by Freya at the brand new studio, who's worked with Jeremy on all of his books.
I'll say the title of the dish, and then I'll explain the wok clock.
Great.
Okay, yeah, fine. All right. So we've got a ginger and spring onion chicken from the School of Wok cookbook. Really starts and finishes with the wok clock. So you do your preparation, you know, any chopping and things like that. And the first segment at 12 o'clock with spring onion, finely sliced spring onion. And then moving on from that, next to the spring onion, we've got some ginger and garlic, because I want my spring onion to go in first before my ginger and garlic. So it gets nicely seared and you get that flavour, that essence of the spring onion. Your ginger and garlic goes in, and then after that on the wok clock, you've got your red onion, slightly harder vegetables, green peppers, whatever veg you want really following on. And then you've got your chicken, which has been marinated, and that's in the recipe. So it's like pre-marinated meat after your harder vegetables. Once your chicken's seared, then you've got the sauce, because I always say that your sauce goes last. In the stir fry, you have sauce in two places, one in the marinade and secondly for your actual stir fry sauce. And that sauce is made up in a little bowl or ramekin, last on your wok clock, with some chicken stock, oyster sauce, dark soy, Shaoxing rice wine, and a bit of sesame oil. And so that can then all get poured into your stir fry at the right time, and you don't hopefully have to go back to the recipe book and make this beautiful recipe book too messy. I always say that my job is to simplify explanations of techniques, but not to simplify techniques.
That makes sense.
So if you find something like the wok clock, which for us is like gold dust, because it's perfect for that, because once you get used to creating your wok clocks, say you're cooking 4 or 5 completely different dishes in one night, like for a little dinner party, really that gets broken down into 4 or 5 plates that you need to wash up at the end, as opposed to the whole kitchen being an absolute mess. Anyone who's like really like uses our sort of teaching takes that on board, like, because it's so much easier, it's so much more pleasurable. Yeah, it's there to like visually have visual impact, to go, okay, now I've cooked 2 or 3 recipes from the book, perhaps I don't even need to read the method and I can just go straight to the ingredients list and the wok clock, and know how to cook it. Yeah, cooking in person is always better because it's more fun, for sure. Yeah, and cooking should be fun, like, or it can be. Cooking should be emotional. It shouldn't, like, it should. It should. You can cook when, like, if you're angry, it's a good time to cook. Like, you definitely get a cleaver out, not for the wrong reasons, but like get a cleaver and a chopping board out and get some ginger and smash it, because like that is like therapy right there in front of you, with a bit of ginger, And well, the other day, and last week I wasn't angry, but I had a stressful week. But my best friend came over from Miami, and like on Friday afternoon, I just set aside 4 hours just to cook whatever I wanted without a camera, like without even any thought or need to take a photo of this beautiful food that I was cooking. And I just put my headphones on, put some music on, and I just cooked. Like, I cooked a banquet for like 3 of us. I said, what do you want to eat? He said, Chinese food, of course. So I was like, okay, fine, I'll cook it. But not very often do I even cook like lobster, like, ginger and spring onion lobster at home. But I haven't seen him for 5 years. So, and it's enjoyable. Yeah.
Though Jeremy is a chef, he's not a chef in the restaurant sense. He's a teacher, so he's in a really unique position for a few different reasons.
From working with you for so long, I felt like at the beginning, it was a much smaller box that you were, or the school was being shoved into, that you were representing Chinese cookery as a whole, or Chinese people as a whole, rather than Jeremy Pang and the School of Wok and all of the people who have come through the doors and their version of what this could be, this cuisine has been for them, their influences, that kind of thing.
No, you are right in that sense. I definitely was shoehorned into my background and my place of origin, I guess. But
which is here.
Yes,
but hilarious.
Yes,
that
I was born in the UK.
Yep.
I was probably for the first 10 years of my life much more British than I was Chinese or deemed to be. I only really started learning about Asian cuisine in Singapore when I lived in Singapore when I was 10 years old. I didn't like food at all for the first 10 years of my life, because I just wanted to play. I found eating a chore, and I didn't actually really see myself as being that Chinese. But over the last sort of couple of decades, you change as you go forwards, and you learn a lot more about your place of origin or your culture or whatever. But actually, even now, my main thing is that I know how to cook good food. I know how to teach it. So why does it matter where it comes from? It's just more about how tasty it is. I know the podcast lecker is it means tasty, doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
Sehr lecker. And my German friend who lived with me in at university, he used to teach me all these little phrases. So every time I have a cup of tea, eine Tasse heißen Tee, sehr lecker. A very tasty cup of tea. But I think that you go through phases in life, don't you? And when you come back to it at the very beginning, I don't have any gripe about people trying to sort of stereotype me. I just know that happens. And no matter what culture you come from, there's always going to be people who do that, whether on purpose or by accident, and that's okay. I'm kind of okay with that. I know that most people won't necessarily agree with that. A lot of people don't agree with that, but I'm okay with it because I was brought up in two cultures, and most of my friends are from all over the world. Where I perhaps have seen my profile change, or is actually I've taken control of that and gone, okay, let me put myself where I want to be. And that, although I've had moments of quite stressful moments, trying to work out what I should be doing or what society thinks I should be doing, I always come back to then taking control of it and not caring what society thinks and just doing what I feel is best. And that is being myself, being kind and generous to others. And my way of doing it is sharing my talent with other people and showing them how they can do it for themselves. And I think that's certainly gotten me in my media world to a much better place. I'm accepted in the industry and respected in the industry for working hard and honing in my skill in communication.
How do you think your customers, what do you think the demands for authenticity?
Yeah, it's a funny word, authenticity, isn't it?
Has it changed?
No, the demand from mass market customers, which definitely from the general public for any type of product or service, is nothing to do with authenticity in my mind. If you're teaching, if you want to educate people in anything, you got to look at what people like, and people like, especially when it comes to food, people like comfort food, things that make them feel comfort, nostalgia, for themselves, not for someone else that they don't know from another country or culture. So authenticity to me is what's authentic to that person that's coming to learn about Chinese food is what they've eaten from the Chinese culture, or from a Chinese takeaway or restaurant, or perhaps a Chinese friend that's cooked for them when they were younger.
So how do you manage that? Because that's the same level of, it sounds, I might be wrong, that's the same level of expectation is pick 3 dishes that you've ever eaten before and I'll teach you how to cook them. In that having to cater to somebody's experience that you may or may not be aware of.
No, yes and no, because after 3 years, even before opening the doors here in central London and doing that service, 80% of the time, people would pick the same dishes. Because in the UK, and not just UK, any country, there are only certain establishments that you can go and they could go and get this food when they were growing up, and so they'd eat whatever was available from those types of establishments. Egg fried rice, sweet and sour pork, crispy chili beef, prawn toast, spring rolls, possibly like a sweet corn soup. Really, like what I would deem as quite, other than maybe a fried rice and a sweet and sour pork, which we would eat in a Chinese family at home, quite far away from a classic, like real Cantonese meal, home meal. But Cantonese people, like Chinese people like myself, even though I was born here, we don't go to Chinese takeaways to eat our dinner. We might own them, but we don't go to them. But even then, as kids, we also loved those things. We loved prawn toast. We loved, a proper sweet and like a sweet and sour. And my mum and dad would scoff at us wanting to order it at a restaurant, but that's what we would want to eat.
It's interesting that you still have to play to what people know. You can't, part of what you do is try to teach and kind of celebrate this openness around Chinese cuisine, around Asian cuisines, and how to make it accessible in domestic spaces with whatever you have, but then having to play to what people know rather than what your family might eat at home.
Yeah, right, but it's education, isn't it? Like my oldest is first year at school. He doesn't walk into school and suddenly start learning algebra. You walk into school and they don't actually have maths lessons. They play games to learn about maths. Like if you don't do that in any other educational sort of environment, and make it fun, then people won't want to learn. Yeah, right. So you gotta. In my mind, no matter who you are, if you want to be able to do like teach people something or show someone something they don't know, they need to be super comfortable about you doing that for them. Yeah? If it means that cooking 1,000 egg fried rices. I joke that I've been flown all over the country to teach someone how to cook an egg fried rice, like flown all over the world. In fact, I remember. This is funny. Like Nev, my business partner, myself, and Shannon, one of our ex-managers, we were flown over to Singapore for a festival, for a wellness, a health and well-being festival, about 4 or 5 years ago, to teach Singaporeans how to make dim sum. I was the only Chinese person there, first and foremost. Nev, my business partner, is I joke that he's this sort of chef from like the West Country of UK, who's only ever taught even how to eat dim sum from me 10 years ago. But we have a skill set, and that is we make people feel really comfortable and relaxed and want to learn. And actually most people in Asia, like in Singapore, even Hong Kong, where dim sum is like the place to be, do not know even like the first sort of step on how to make a dumpling pastry. Right? So that's funny. I've flown over to Hong Kong just for one day just to teach an audience of like 1,500 people how to make a healthy fried rice, because in Hong Kong people don't cook, because they can get that fried rice for a couple of quid down the road. Why would they make it themselves? Yeah, it's an interesting concept. It's funny, but the point I'm getting at is and I'm getting closer and closer to being able to talk to huge audiences now, but it hasn't changed. My way of talking to a big audience or a small audience never changed. And that is, how do I make everyone in that audience feel comfortable and have a bit of fun? Yeah. And that works. It works. Yeah.
This episode of Lecker was hosted by Adrian Katz-Kennedy and produced by me, Lucy Dearlove. You can read Adrian's writing and find out more about her on her website, adriankatzkennedy.com. And you can find out more about Jeremy Pang at jeremypang.co.uk. And his new book, Jeremy Pang's School of Wok, is out now. Wok clock illustrations and all. This month's Patreon exclusive episode is a conversation between myself and Adrian about the making of this episode, which was something new for both of us. It was a really interesting process for me for various reasons, and you can listen to us talk about that by becoming a patron of Lecker for £3 a month. That's at patreon.com/Lecker podcast. Lecker is entirely listener funded, and Patreon subscriptions allow me to cover running costs like transcription and music library fees, but also hopefully do more collaboration like this in the future where I can pay co-hosts and contributors fairly, which is really important to me. So if you've enjoyed hearing from Adrian on this episode, then please do consider subscribing if you can afford to. Other ways you can support Lecker: rate and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Buy things from the Lecker Big Cartel site, I'll link that in the show description, and just tell your friends. Music is by Blue Dot Sessions. Thanks to Ben McDonald, who did a fantastic illustration of Jeremy for this episode, as he does for many of the Lecker episodes. You can see that on the Lecker Instagram and Twitter at Lecker Podcast. And I know I've been away for a while, but I've got a load more episodes to come over the next few weeks, some really exciting things. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll be back in your feed very, very soon.